welcome back to the Grow Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Nolan, and today we have Andy Larson from UNL. He's an extension educator, and we're going to be talking about 4-H. So you're an extension educator, and said your focus was 4-H innovation and entrepreneurship.
Yes.
What does that mean?
That's a great question. So I'm actually in the state office on campus, and as an innovation and entrepreneurship educator, that's my focus area. So I kind of help support the local educators across the state in innovation and entrepreneurship programming for youth. So examples of that could be we have like an Adventure Day program where students learn about the entrepreneurship mindset and how they can be entrepreneurs in their community, and it creates a link between the community and the students. So you're bringing in local entrepreneurs to help with the experience. They have mentors, stuff like that. So it's really getting students to think about how they can be entrepreneurs or how they can think like entrepreneurs in their own communities, and just creating that connection between youth and entrepreneurs in the community.
Well, that's cool. So kind of teaching them how to get started.
Definitely, yeah. We've had a few youth that have gone through the experience and then like started their own business afterwards, and just getting them more interested in the process, because it's something that they can use whether they start a business or they don't start a business. It's something that they can always use into the future when they're in the workforce.
So I know when we had talked before, you said you weren't in 4-H when you were younger. So how did you get to this point?
That's a good question too. Yeah, my first 4-H experience was working for 4-H. Actually, in Minnesota, I worked briefly for Extension there as well. But I've always been involved with like youth programming or community programming. So how I got involved with 4-H is this job really drew me in, just because I love that in 4-H you're creating experiences that communities want and need. So it's not like you're taking a textbook and applying it to a situation. You're really connecting with the community, and if they say, hey, this is something we really are excited about and we want to start here, then you create something with them
tailored
around that
specifically to what
exactly
they need.
Yeah.
Getting younger people, obviously 4-H does way more than just agriculture.
Yes.
But our listeners, our customers, 4-H is just part of, it's just part of our lives.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a struggle getting younger people into agriculture right now. So I know that's not your specific focus, but
right.
do you have any thoughts on what's kind of standing in their way of getting started with that, or keeping them interested,
For sure. I think there's difficulties with a lot of different focus areas when it comes to getting youth involved. I think the best thing that you can do, or some of maybe the barriers to that, are just creating those connections, like I mentioned earlier, within the community and with just people in general. A lot of times I think youth, when it's with agriculture or whatever it is, they get really excited about it because they have that experience or that connection with people, and especially in their own communities, they look up to the people that are older than them. So when you can create that connection with, whether it's like a local farmer or somebody that's in the industry, and they have that personal connection and they have a really good experience, and they're much more likely to want to
pursue
do that.
And make it happen.
So I think anytime you can do more of that, that's definitely helpful. Thinking back to when we were kids, what was super exciting is if you read about it in a book or at school, you're forced to kind of do that.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it in a 4-H experience and you're creating those connections with people and you're having fun while you're doing it, then I think that's much more likely to want to do that in the future.
Yeah, I guess I never really considered it. I was in 4-H as a kid.
Yeah.
I am in the media side of things. So in 4-H, it was more of an artsy sort of stuff.
Yeah,
I didn't show.
Yeah.
I grew up on a hog farm, but I didn't show any animals. I drew pictures. I painted. I built with Legos, and so I basically played, and now I've turned that into a career, so I can see where that transition happens.
For sure. And it's super, I mean, so that's what I always try to do, even when I'm like working with people or creating programs or whatever it is, working with youth, is thinking of it from their perspective of like what, our goal is to maybe have them learn more about agriculture or get involved with agriculture. But from a youth perspective, is that something that they truly care about? So how do we make it fun and exciting and give them something that they can do that they love, but they're also learning and getting engaged with agriculture or whatever it is?
So obviously social distancing makes it hard to connect with people. Like, what are you guys doing to keep that? Because I know like the fairs have been going on. I think most of them are wrapped up or wrapping up. And a lot of them have done, I think, a pretty good job about keeping things going safely. Like, so what, in your experience, like what have you guys been doing to keep that connection and that education going?
Yeah, and that's amazing. I definitely want to give a shout out to all of the educators across the state, because I mean, it's really been phenomenal and amazing to see when you take a step back and look and see what they've done to create a great experience while going through this pandemic. People struggle with change in normal everyday life.
Yes.
And it seems like, every single county and every single area is in a different place in regards to the pandemic. So we're changing almost daily what we're having to do.
Like what the rules are.
Yeah. So some of the examples would be like, during doing like virtual showcases, so people can either show their animals or their exhibits virtually, whether it's taking a video or a picture, and allowing that to happen so people still have the opportunity to experience 4-H, but it just may look a little different.
Yeah.
Some other examples of that are creating virtual programming, so students and youth can kind of connect with each other across the state still while being, home or socially distanced. And I think that's been the greatest thing that we could bring, is just they're still able to make that connection with each other, which is super important when you're younger, but also taking in mind the safety precautions and all of that. And I think we've done a really good job of that. And again, I can't thank enough for people. It's been frustrating and hard at times, but to continue to just roll with the punches, as you can say, and make the best experience possible for the youth has been the goal for everybody. And I think it's been successful because of that. And we've actually gotten more youth involved, maybe that weren't involved in 4-H before, because of certain barriers. So now that it's, if there's a virtual opportunity for showing, or that may reduce some of the barriers for people who weren't involved before.
So have you heard a lot of feedback from people, like the people that are participating?
Yeah, I think, it's different. So I think for the most part, people have been really happy that they've been able to have the experience still. They obviously, if you had to choose, you'd probably want to go back to the normal experience. But I think people, considering a lot of things have been canceled, the fact that, in 4-H, we weren't necessarily canceling a lot of things. We were just changing it. And I think people were just happy that they still had some experience and they were able to participate in some way rather than just not being able to participate at all. So that's, I think, generally the feedback we've been getting.
Well, good. So 4-H has been around for just over 100 years. What is since it's not just, because when I grew up, I thought 4-H was just strictly agricultural, because I grew up in a smaller county.
Right.
What is that goal? What is the ultimate, why does 4-H exist?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, that was my thought too. When I first became involved with 4-H working for them, I thought it was all about, showing animals and arts and crafts and stuff like that as well. But I mean, the goal of 4-H, I would say, just in normal everyday terms, is to create an experience for youth where they're growing and developing leadership skills and connections with each other that can be applied in the future when they get older and they become better people. And, the great thing about 4-H and the programming in general is it's really driven by the youth. So if, we connect with them and get their feedback and say, hey, if you want to do, in a business program, let's create, if that's what the youth want and we're seeing that they need, let's create that, or
get them what they need.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not driven by adults. We're not saying this is what youth need. We're really connecting with the youth and hearing what they want and they need. And then we're creating programs and services with that feedback in mind. So really they're at the heart of the process. And I think that's something that's unique and great about 4-H.
That they can shape it.
Yes. Yep.
So I'm going to segue real quick and let everybody listening know. So harvest is coming up very quickly for our area, and it's already kicked off in some other areas. So one thing that some people are doing is paying an outside company to help them market their grain. And I just want to let everybody know that you don't have to do that if you are a member of Farmers Cooperative. So we've got people on staff. We have 5 grain originators that can help you come up with a plan to suit your specific needs. And if you're a member of the co-op, that doesn't cost you anything extra. They'll just do it for you. And that's all they do all day long, so they know what they're doing. We've got a few people that are licensed on the Chicago Board of Trade. So if that's something that people are interested in, we can help with that. And again, doesn't cost you anything extra. So if you're looking for ideas, looking to make a plan, don't rush out and hire some outside company before calling your local co-op. Call your local branch, ask for your grain originator's phone number, or you can hit up myfarmerscoop.com/grain. Scroll to the bottom, and you will find the names of the grain team, and they'll be listed down there, grain originators. Or call Dorchester at 402-946-2211, and they'll get you squared away. Won't cost you a penny extra, and it'll be worth your time. So to get back to this, you kind of answered my question. My next question was going to be, how has 4-H changed? But it sounds like the whole idea is to change with the times for what kids need. So I found online that it unofficially started in 1902.
Yeah.
So obviously it's changed a lot. Do you know of any, what's the biggest change from the day it started till today? Yeah.
That's a great question. And it's absolutely true too. I mean, especially working with youth, and nowadays we are changing at a rate that's it's constant change all the time, with technology and everything. And I would say that's probably the greatest change for us as educators or adults is, the youth are so adaptable to change, and they're so in tune with what's cool and what's new and what's trendy. And that technology piece is sometimes lost with youth because we want kids to embrace, being outside or, putting the technology away. And I think that's one of the things that we've kind of done a good job of adapting with is using technology to our advantage. And a great example of that is, we were kind of forced to do that recently, but, and it's scary at first, but we've learned that we can use a lot of that in the future. So a lot of the stuff that we're doing right now, whether it's virtual programming over Zoom and building those connections, we're going to bring that into the future as well and continue using that, after we're over this pandemic and past this stage, because it's, we're bringing together youth across the state that may have never interacted with each other, which is really cool. We've already talked about youth maybe not being involved in 4-H before, but now we've had this platform where they can join us and be involved. And so those are really cool things. And to be able to have youth across the state, talking to each other and engaging with each other and seeing each other and, brainstorming with each other. That technology has been amazing. And, the fact that we can use that, but still have our goal of, youth having a great 4-H experience has been something that's really cool, and that's something that we will take into the future.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not an ideal way to have to learn how to use things like Zoom and Teams and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, that is, at least looking at the bright side, an awesome, I guess, asset to have that you didn't have before. Well, I guess you had before, but you didn't
use it.
Didn't need to use it before. So if somebody listening, like when I was a kid, 4-H was just something that we did. I mean, my friends did it, It was just like, you just did it. So if somebody listening is on the fence on putting their kid into 4-H or introducing them to it, like, what's your sales pitch? What would you say to them?
Yeah, and I think I'm the perfect person in a way to kind of talk about this, because I wasn't involved in 4-H growing up because I thought it was just one thing. I thought it was kind of an exclusive club as well. Like, you had to be in 4-H or your parents had to be in 4-H. And it's real. I would say, my sales pitch to people is, in 4-H, it's a great way to explore, and it's a great way to meet new friends, and that's what all organizations say, right? But I think the differentiator, or the great thing that we bring to the table, is it's a welcoming environment, and we have people in every single county and almost every single city that have those personal connections, and I think that's different than other organizations. Like, we really listen to you, and we really care about what your experience is like. And that doesn't always happen. So you can essentially do anything that you want in 4-H. And that sounds kind of corny in a way, but it's true. It's, who would have thought 4-H, like you and I have talked about, has those entrepreneurship programs, or has speech or photography, or the agricultural aspect, showing animals. I mean, in a lot of states, 4-H runs the soccer programs, sports programs. So I would say, it's not necessarily as it seems. It's not just showing animals. So even taking that step of just reaching out to people and asking them what their experience is, it's definitely worth just checking it out and trying it out, because you're going to have, I promise, your youth will have a great experience. Your kids will have a great experience, because, again, we're tailoring that experience to each individual.
Well, and I guess, finding like-minded, like if your kid is into a specific subject matter, that'd be an easy way to find other kids that are into that same thing.
Right. And you're building those relationships, like I said, across the state. So, I mean, in the future, if you stick with 4-H or whatever it is, and you build those connections with people, those are connections that you can use in the future, and relationships that you can use in the future, which I think is something that's really cool. I mean, growing up, I probably never really connected with that many people thinking about it outside of my own area or city of the state that I lived in. So that's something that's really cool.
Is there any, do you have any cool stories of this kid, how his something amazing changed through 4-H, or even you personally, as a 4-H educator, is there any? Yeah, I know what I'm trying to say, but I'm trying to think of the words.
If there's any, kids that have maybe joined 4-H or had an experience with 4-H that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise if they weren't in 4-H. I mean, just one quick example that I think is really cool. I mean, for me as an educator, I'm inspired by youth every single day. There's been so many times when I've been on a virtual session lately over the last few months, and, we ask the youth a question and they come up with these ideas, and I'm like, man, I wish I would have came up with that idea. Yeah. They are just so genuine, and they're not afraid to fail. So any answer or anything that they come up with is just, whether it's feasible or not, it doesn't matter. So that's super inspiring to me. But one specific story that I can think of with the youth that's super exciting to me is, I mentioned our Adventure Day experience earlier, which isn't necessarily agricultural focused, but what's great about entrepreneurship is it can be applied in any field. So our Adventure Day brings, and this was actually out in western Nebraska. So we brought together, I believe it was 2 school districts together, and it's middle school students. So they may be meeting each other for the first time, right? And they're going through this experience and they're learning about entrepreneurship and business and marketing and, researching different ideas. And it really gets them excited about the process and thinking like an entrepreneur. And afterwards, a couple months later, the local educator there was telling us that one of the students that was involved with that inspired them to start their own business. And I believe it was he sold fishing products and created a website. So this was during the pandemic too. So that's another thing. It was like, okay, I'm sitting at home. What do I do? I had this experience. Maybe I can apply some of these skills in real life. And that's what he did. And I think that's something that's super cool. This kid's like 12 years old and starting his own business. Like, I would have never thought of doing that. I'm 32 years old and I haven't started my own business. So that's super exciting. And that's an experience that maybe if they didn't have that 4-H and Venture Day experience, they might not have done that. Who knows? So that's something I think that's inspiring to me, is kids all over the state have experiences like that in 4-H, that if 4-H didn't exist, maybe they might not have done it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So if somebody is looking to get into 4-H, like, is there a website that they can go to, or like how do they start that process?
Yeah, I think the best option, so there's a few different options. Like I had mentioned before, we have local educators in every county. So if you reach out to the county extension office, they can, in your county, they can put you in touch with the local 4-H educator. But if you go to UNL's website, so unl.edu, and you search for 4-H, all of the information and program information is listed on UNL's website. So it's kind of a nice place to go because it's all right there. It's all right there. So you can find, it's super easy to find any program area or focus area. So, I mean, that would be a good place to start, because then you could see
what's going on
and what there is to offer, and where you can get started and who you can connect with.
All right. Well, I appreciate you spending the time coming in here. It was a good talk. As far as everybody listening, make sure you come back. We post a new episode every 2 weeks on Fridays. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. And as always, keep growing.